So, PS5, not impressed, huh?
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say about it is there are no loading times, which is kind of incredible. And being able to just like blaze through it the whole time was
Mm-hmm.
pretty fun. But then again, like it became one of those things where like we were like playing games and then they're like, "Well, let's download something new." And even though that was fast, it still took a long time and it wasn't as, like the internet's not there either. I wonder what it's like in other countries where the internet's good.
Right. I don't know.
Oh,
I'm,
excuse me, Steven from Texas. This is probably just a little bit too much banter for
oh,
you
yeah.
right now.
First off, welcome to season 2. And
Welcome to season 2, and yes, we are starting it with a bad review.
we're starting it with a bad review. Steven from Texas. He said there's no substance to this podcast, and it's just a lot of banter. Well, you nailed it, Steven.
As described.
Accurate.
Actually, to be completely fair, I think none of our Halloween episodes have banter in them. So go listen to those, Steven. Those might be more your speed.
I mean, let's be real. If you're listening to this in order, I don't know if I recommend that because we don't do anything in order except the banter. But the actual like podcast topic part of it, you can just pick up wherever you want.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not we're still like nailing the balance between everything. And
But but Steven,
also I don't care.
just know, Steven, just know that we're not doing it for you
No.
or anyone else.
But thanks for listening, Steven.
Thanks for listening, but it's really for us.
Welcome to Religion the Podcast. I made this for me.
I'm it's ours and not yours. Well, we actually are trying to cut down on the banter and just jump straight into topics, which was a decision we made long before we discovered Steven's review.
Yeah, which is like kind of funny because we're like, oh yeah, dude, we so agree with you and we're working on it.
So, Steven, you'll love this episode. First off, welcome to Religion the Podcast. My name's Garrett.
My name's Peter.
I rewrote the description. This is a show about where we break down all of our like religious problems, beliefs, questions, practices, issues, wonders, and perspective, and try to make sense of it together. I thought it'd be fun if like we always rewrote that list.
Okay, I'm
where
down.
We say like we break down religious, and then I'll say like a word, so like problems, and then you say like another thing that we're gonna talk about, and then we'll go back and forth. Let's see what we come up with.
That sounds great.
Okay.
Okay, I have to point something out because we talked about it the last time we recorded. Because you keep bringing up how you're bad at telling stories, and I don't.
Did you go back and you were like, "Is he really bad at telling stories?" And
No, because I think I just figured out what it like. Okay, when you just did that list, when you just read that thing, you read it very quickly.
Oh,
to where I felt like I missed it, and I think that's what it is. I think you just need to slow down a tiny bit.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. Unlike Steven from Texas, I'm just kidding. Honestly, if anyone wants to write us, it takes the time to write us a review. Thanks.
I mean, I think
if
having
you take the time to listen and then review this, even if it's 1 star, appreciate
thank
that.
you. Yeah, because if we ended up with a bunch of 1-star reviews, people would still probably listen to the podcast just to find out why that many people rated it 1 star. So I think it works. I think 1 star are 5-star reviews in a way.
Any star is a star. Any star
Exactly.
is a 5-star. All right, do you want to try the intro that way?
I got say the intro thing again, and I'll
All
just
right.
chop this part of it out.
This is a show where we break down our religious problems, and then you're going to say something else, like another category. So it could be like beliefs or like what else?
And our masturbation habits. Does that fit in there?
Yeah, I mean it could be
Okay.
anything. That's why it's funny.
I think we need to be careful. There's a little bit too much banter happening right now, and we need to be sensitive to people like Steven from Texas just to make sure that he's still able to enjoy the podcast.
Oh God, we've been recording for like 7 minutes and it's just
Oh,
banter.
there's so much banter.
All right. Well, welcome to Religion the Podcast. My name's Garrett.
My name's Peter.
This is a show where we break down our religious hang-ups
And hang-ons.
and really all the things about religion, and then we try to make sense of it together. And that's it. That's what this show is.
That was a great attempt on my part. It wasn't quite there, but it was an attempt.
Do you want to leave it in or do it again?
No, I want to leave all of this in.
Yeah, it's great. Okay, so this is one of the times, Peter and I actually do care. I mean, we're shitting on Steven from Texas a lot, but we do care, and we do talk about the show and what we want it to be. And we did actually make a decision like 2 months ago to cut down on the banter. But then also we were like, let's change up the format a little bit. It's been fun to do Halloween, and it's been fun to talk through some of our own like personal issues and stuff, but then we were like, let's just like talk about, shorten it a little bit and just get into one thing, because I feel like our conversations dissolve into something else anyways. So whatever.
Ain't that the truth?
So for work, I was doing some research, but I came across an article called in Business Insider that says some Christians said Trump has pushed some young people away from their churches, and his impact on Christianity could last well beyond his presidency. And I know we said we wouldn't do like a political episode again, so we don't want to get into politics at all. But I think this is fascinating that like all these people have kind of like hitched their wagon to Trump, and I guess like 4 years later, they're just now realizing he's not a Christian.
Yeah. And I think this is it's timed kind of nicely in a way, because we are actually dealing with the fact now that like it looks like the Trump train stopped.
Yeah.
And we're shifting over to something else now. And I mean, really, it really seems like the cleanup crew just showed up and is about to start, putting things in garbage bags. There's just going to be the thousands of like black garbage bags with red MAGA hats in them.
Or they're going to become like weird collector's items, like the rebel Confederate flag or something.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think they're going to become like swastikas, because I think they're going to get treated with too much legitimacy from more like liberal-leaning individuals.
Right.
And so there's going to be like an outcry against the hats, and I think that's going to give them power in a way. Whereas if you just kind of like left it right now, it would just deflate and it would be nothing. It would be like, like a pun that people use, like make the hot dogs great again.
Right.
It's just going to become like a slogan for a place that kind of, it tells you everything you need to know about where you're going to be going and eating if they use that as a slogan. So
make pie great again.
Yeah, right.
Don't eat that racist pie.
We're just like taking the you know how they during like all the protests and everything, particularly in England, they would make like inflatables of Trump that were like pretty much just like round and bulbous. We're essentially just letting the air out of like a massive one of those. Like if there was a main effigy of Trump, like essentially just like open the hose on the back and we're letting the air out very slowly.
Oh yeah.
So to me, all of that is to say that this seems like kind of like a nicely timed conversation, because really from looking at this stuff, like Christianity is going to be different because of this one guy.
Okay, so get this. There's a guy, Michael Ware. He was, I guess, like the faith advisor to Barack Obama.
Uh
And
huh.
this guy's like not a part of this group called Not Our Faith, with is this like action committee who, or I guess are Christians who, oppose uh, opposed Trump's reelection, and
Uh huh.
he said that he hears from Christians of all ages that tell him they can no longer enjoy the basic aspects of their religious communities, like coffee after church, small group discussions, because of the new divisions amongst Christianity. And I just think it's fascinating that, like, we talked before on the show. I mean, you can go listen to the episode where we talk about how, like, Christians became Republican. It's a very recent thing. It's been done intentionally. You should really, look into that. But I think I'm more fascinated with the fact that, like, I'm trying to wrap my mind around how you could care about Trump that much being Christian and then somehow like convince yourself that it's true and then have it all fall apart for you in 4 years. Like how I think it's just fascinating that you kind of have to essentially like lie to yourself to make it make sense or convince yourself that he needed to be like elected in the first place, but he had to be Christian.
Well, yeah. I mean, what you're, and forgive me if there are some like wonderful terms out there that would do a better job of explaining this stuff. But what you've essentially done is like propped up both Christianity and the Republican Party as things that have like great moral strength to them, enough to put like all of your like belief system into both of them
Mm-hmm.
interchangeably. Because what you're basically saying by like co-signing with Trump without like looking at everything is like, well, one, he's a Christian, and two, he's a Republican. And it doesn't seem like either of those things are true at the end of the day, because I mean, it kind of just looks like the Republican party got hit with. Okay, and then this is the gears in my brain turning a little bit too fast. But okay, what if that thing that we talk about, how being religious can sometimes make you gullible to other parts of reality? What if that's what worked on the Republican Party, where they bought the Jesus thing and then they bought the Trump thing? Because if you buy the Jesus thing in the state that it's in, don't get me wrong, I think Jesus was awesome, but I don't think we understood what he was here to do.
Oh yeah.
So with that version of Christianity that's like, you just kind of have to take the leap of faith and buy it and go for it. I mean, you're asked to do the same thing with Trump, where you go, oh, this guy's a Republican and he's a Christian and he's gonna make America great again. And
Right.
you go, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I definitely can see how if you, I mean, let's be honest. Like, in your experience, do you find Christianity to be misguided right now?
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that are calling themselves like the call myself a Christian, but have ideals that are just like American ideals. Like that's I'm seeing that to a T more than anything now.
Right.
Where the I mean, it really I mean it was that thing that they said when Trump was about to become president, that like he will dictate the morals for the country. And it's, well, for Christians, I think he probably did, because that was like the strong leadership as far as there being one person, and we're not really getting good messages from that.
Oh yeah, I think that's what's wild to me is that the you said that you were talking about like the leaders. Well, seeing how a lot of the leadership has been behaving within Christianity. It's it makes me think that they're not trustworthy right now.
Yeah.
Having like hitched their, you know, I just for I think for me, Trump has always been like real black and white. It's just yeah, it's like yeah, he's not a Christian. That's not really he doesn't really like buy into Christian values. It's just lip service, like it really is just like, I'm going to label myself this, and hopefully we'll get that like demographic to vote for me. That was as far
Yeah.
as the thought process went for, in
Lip
my opinion.
service is the perfect way to sum it up because because it never sounded genuine. It never went below surface level whenever you heard him talk about Christianity in any way.
Right. Which is, in a way, he's like lying. It's just, it'd be much better if he was like, I'm not against it, I just don't practice it or whatever. And that would be like a better, you know, overall decision, instead of to lie and embrace it and then have all these people buy into the fact that like he's embracing and become like is a Christian or whatever.
Yeah.
I just think it's fascinating that we it's almost like we could potentially see like the split of Christianity. Have you ever thought about that? That's what this article makes me think about. That like we could be at the very beginning of Christianity splitting, because you have a whole bunch of people who are really conservative and they love Trump, and then you have Christians who are like not so conservative and they don't see, Trump as a Christian. And so now it's just like a really hard and confusing time. And that's what's so fascinating about this article is like there was a lady interviewed, and she says, I just can't be okay with the misogynistic, homophobic, racist, xenophobic, etc. things that spew from Trump's mouth, or the people that follow him and also call themselves Christians. So I think she summed it up as one of those people who are like, I'm not on board with this guy, like, but now what? Like what do I do? And then how do you like merge those like two groups of people back into like one Christianity?
Oh, I don't. I think that. I think this is a rabbit you can't put back in a hat.
Right?
Um, no, I think I don't think you're reading the situation wrong when you think that there's a potential split coming. I think there's like more than one potential split coming because like we've already done our big. The thing that you have to understand with like when groups splinter is as they continue to splinter, the less of one mainstream thing you end up getting. And we're already doing that as a culture anyway, where it's like, you can talk to someone that's even like our age or older about music and walk away and go, you know what, I've never heard of a single one of those artists that they're into. And you could go on Spotify and they could all have like 1 million plus 2 million listeners, and it's just nothing to you at all. It's never come into your consciousness because that's just how kind of divided everything out. And that's great. That's part of why living right now is amazing, is because there is something for you here, probably.
The level
And
of
if not,
personalization is awesome.
it is. And it's getting even more particular to where I think we really are just going to have like tiny little cults sprinkled throughout all of
Oh yeah.
reality that people join. And I think it's going to probably be better because like we just have too many people on the planet, and everyone feels separate from each other.
Well, I mean, I'm
Which
just
is
the stuff we're doing
part of
for
what we're
work,
talking about.
like the marketing that I'm doing for work next year is like, go to the website and then basically there's code to figure out, where you live, who you are, all these things about you, and then the website personalizes for you in real time, like up to the
Oh,
level of switching out words for things, pictures of people,
interesting.
content we want you to like think you might want to be diving into, and that's totally normal.
That's probably gonna get into the next episode that we're doing, but I mean, isn't everything kind of heading that way anyway? And then
Yeah.
like, isn't that like the nature of reality? Is it just reflective?
Right.
I digress.
I just think that, okay, obviously the wake up call for me this in the last 4 years, which is also shared on the show, but that uh, I realized that a lot of my faith that I grew up with wasn't just about Jesus, right? That
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't. But that's what I thought I was getting. As I was just getting like straight from the Bible version of Jesus. That's not what I was getting. I was also getting someone else's opinions like, and sometimes like even someone's like political opinions or like lifestyle opinions that actually don't matter to Jesus. And I think that's been happening on like a really really large scale. I think now that someone so horrible has claimed to be Christian and he's so polarizing, people either like love or hate him. And I'm just really in a way saddened because I think this is blowback on trying to merge religion and politics.
Yeah, it's and the thing that's hard about it is like once we split between the Trump people and the non-Trump people as far as Christians go, you're gonna have uh well, I think the Trump people are gonna probably just like do their own thing, and like that's gonna be that. But
Right.
the non-Trump people are gonna go, well, we have a whole bunch of other stuff that we also don't agree on, because you're gonna have the old school Christians that are very much in like the regular mainstream Christianity that are not about Trump at all, but you're gonna have like this new brand of Christian that uh, is very into like the new agey kind of aspect of everything, and like the more like new breed of like Pentecostal that's starting to arise. And then there's just like, the people that are like into Ram Dass as well as going to church. And then there's like us who just kind of stands off on the corner like looking squinty eyed at everybody, just kind of going, I'm not really sure what all of y'all are doing, but it all seems just a little questionable.
Yeah, you're kind of too into everything you like. Yeah, I just wonder if we're on the beginning. It just makes me think about that we might be on the beginning of like another split. I'm really curious to see how the next. I don't even want to say the next 4 years. Like it's all tied into like the presidency or some shit like that. It's just that I'm excited to see like the next like version of this as it continues to like split out. And it's real fascinating to me that I had this, experience this past year, and I'm a part of this group in a way that like just started to understand that like, oh, the faith I have isn't really just about this Jesus guy. So now to what do I do with it? I don't know. It's definitely super weird. And I agree with the sentiments of this article that like it's not that I'm like losing faith in this like Jesus guy. I think you nailed it earlier. You talked about like we don't really understand who Jesus is and like what he came here to do. So it's not like I haven't like given up on that, but I've definitely given up on the trust and confidence of like Christian leaders or people who claim to speak for Christianity. It's like, are
Yeah.
we reading the same shit? Are we even like looking at the same things? Doesn't seem like it at all.
The and I don't trust people that come across as so completely sure about one aspect of Christianity or the Bible or anything. Like anyone that just like doubles down on a particular reality. And when it comes to interpretations of the Bible, that to me is just crazy, because there are certain like undisputable historical facts that you just can't get around.
Like what?
Um, like it, like it wasn't written by God.
Oh yeah. And then a bunch of
um,
people over hundreds of years decided what was in and out of it.
right. Like there would be, so okay, if it was written by God, we would have this myth, this legend of God coming down and inspiring these people to write this book, which is what they tell you in church, but they fucked up and they didn't add like a fable or like a story into the thing happening. There's no Moses going up the mountain and getting the Bible from God. It's, the 10 Commandments, if anything.
Right.
And they should have just worked like a little bit harder, because what it is instead is like a record of humanity that's interesting in the fact that like it seems to go back and forth between like actual story and like myth and legend, and then poetry that doesn't really even make like there are certain interpretations where you go, you know what, somehow this makes more logical sense than the rest of them.
Right.
But God, I forgot what my point of that. Oh, I think it's just that the doubling down on any kind of opinion when it comes to the Bible. It's just so foolish.
Well, that's okay. That's such a good insight because I think that's what I have a hang up with people is okay, even if you have a really strong belief about something, you kind of have to end it with like, but I don't really know.
Yeah, it's just
you,
what I believe.
you kind of have to sit there and shrug and be like, but that's just me. And no one does that.
No, I
You're
don't.
so like dead set on like what the Bible is or like what Christianity should be. Like Christianity should be Republican and conservative, but like that's not a biblical idea that it didn't come from biblical times. It's a very recent idea that has been,
Yeah.
you know, the political side of it has been convoluted with the religious side of it.
And to anyone that says, "Yeah, I agree with that," and Jesus was definitely like a liberal Democrat. Well, unfortunately for the Democrats, they didn't used to always be associated with like the liberal idea, like the basic stuff that we associate with as far as like helping out other people, like welfare,
Mm-hmm.
like bringing everyone like the like veering into like socialism a little bit. Democrats actually used to be like the fancy rich people that hated, the lower classes. Like they switched at a certain point in history where like one became the other.
Right.
And I mean, it's also like, come on, y'all, it's 2020. Do you really believe that like there's a difference between the two political parties? Like it's just a bunch of rich people trying to keep everybody else down.
They're
Like
just trying to
that's
control and manipulate you to get you to do what they want. It's not.
exactly. So
It's
if you
not
feel
that
more
crazy
on
to
their
see.
side, yeah. If you're feeling empowered to be on like one side versus the other, then that probably means that like they got to you, you know.
Right. Well, it's the same. Okay, the same thing is happening within religion. Is that you want people to buy into like your beliefs and your thoughts and all and your behaviors that you say you know your interpretation is the most important one and it's the right one and all the other things, and that's just a way to like control people and get them to like align with you, which is funny because when you look at just looking at the Bible, if you when you look how people read like sacred like or ancient Christian texts, they no one had like access to them. It was like a shared thing within the community, and you would read it out loud and then debate it. They would debate what the interpretations were. They weren't just. It wasn't like one person or a few people like your pastor. I mean, there's hundreds, millions of pastors, but there's far more normal people than there are pastors. So you have a few people just interpreting the Bible and telling everyone else what it is. That wasn't really happening back in biblical times. It makes me think like, well, what are we missing by doubling down constantly on our beliefs and thoughts?
Could you imagine how awesome church would be if you could, like, okay, who's the we get to do this now. Who's the guy that preaches at Southside, the big guy? Andy Stanley, is that his name?
Andy Stanley
Okay. So what if what
or North
what
Point?
if
North Point?
yeah.
Yeah.
What if you go to North Point and Andy Stanley gets about 10 minutes into what he's talking about, and you get to just stand up and be like, bullshit, this is what I think.
Everyone's had that feeling though. I mean, if you're like us and you're like really trying to question things and work through what you think or how you process the Bible, if you've listened to a sermon and you've heard a Bible verse that you know is like taken out of context, it's exactly what you want to do is stand up and be like, bullshit. That's not even what they're
Yeah.
talking about.
That's why this stuff can be particularly vicious, and I mean, it almost seems like Trump knew what he was doing when he started doing this, because all the people that won't just move in, like, if we're using Bible metaphors, and I'm gonna I guess we're flipping it on its head, like, just like the sheeple of the Christian world that moved into that Trump reality,
Mm-hmm.
all the people that didn't go along with that, that would get hit by that and go, oh well, this now like forces me into action because it's too much.
Hmm.
I think those are probably the people that were having doubts and issues with the church in the first place. So
Yeah.
more likely what's going to happen is the people that are no longer riding the Trump train are probably just not going to be church people anymore. And they're probably going to figure out something else for themselves.
Yeah. That's such a good segue. Listen to this quote from the article. I think you have this missing generation of us in our 20s and 30s that are exhausted and who can never really figure out a way to turn back to the physical church building. I think there's a lot of hurt there. And I think that what that this kind of what that boils down to is that, you know, you're you really are pushing people away. Like people have gotten like pushed away and may never come back. And it was I wonder how many of those would have just been fine. Like if I don't like to play the what if Trump never got elected
Right.
and try to like dwell on that and hope for that. I think it's a waste of time. But I do think it's interesting, like to your point, they had all these problems that may never have turned into problems that they are now. Like because of Trump getting elected and the way it was handled within the church or their
Right.
churches, I should say. Because yeah, not everyone is in this camp, but that's the point. Is like there's a pretty clear split amongst people who are like all about it, all about Trump and all this weird craziness, and then some people who are just don't know what to think about any of it. And they just want to distance themselves. And
I know,
whether it's
yeah.
intentional or not, I mean, it's definitely hurt some people. I mean, they may have it may be church is weird right now anyways because of COVID times. People haven't been in church in a lot of ways, in a lot of places normally for a long time. And it may never go back to normal because of the mixing of religion and politics and doubling down, which I mean, that's such a good word. Just doubling down on something, their beliefs.
I mean, there is kind of a big question mark when it comes to the Republican Party going forward. Like, what are they gonna do post Trump?
I don't know. I really don't.
Because it's gonna be the same kind of thing that hits Christians in general. Is it's just like where do you go when you've been following like the sad like circus clown and like he didn't take you anywhere, you know?
And it turns out to be like John Wayne Gacy and he's trying to like kill you.
Yeah. I don't. I think Trump is a little bit more innocuous than that. I don't. My whole thing on him is I think he's a really good reflection of all the aspects of Americans that we're not like a big fan of, like the stuff that the negative shit that other countries see.
It's
I
like the
think he's a
epitome of that.
yeah, and just in like one perfect summed up person. And I think he represents a lot of the stuff that like we're trying to do away with in this country is, you
Hmm.
know, move forward and make progress. Um,
I wonder if people just recognize it at a spiritual level that just something's off about him. Because those unhealthy American ideas definitely don't fall in line with anything Christianity tells you to do.
mm-mm. It's just it like purely represent, and I understand why so many Christians were just like, well, this I'm officially done because of this now.
Right.
Uh, because again, it's he's also all the qualities that we don't like in Christians that we see and go, you're not playing the game the way that everybody else is in the same like you say that you're doing the things, but like we see what you're doing and it's not good.
Right.
Uh, and that was always the like, and I guess that really is like a cult mentality. Um, that as soon as someone does something a little bit different than the group, that you feel like they've stepped out of it. But that was the thing, like growing up in church, is when you would find out that like, oh, this guy in the church was like having an affair, like this parent, was really like sleeping with someone else's mom, and
Right.
um, you would always go, oh, so it wasn't real. Like you were just putting on a play for everybody, and you just see them in this like completely different. And I wonder if that's even a side effect of you know the judgmental aspects of Christianity, that when someone like screws up or quote unquote sins, that you start viewing them in a bad light.
I think that's the thing that bothers me so much is we've made it about behavior that these it's
Right.
Christianity is about like this is a sin and this isn't, and this real like lots of time devoted to trying to figure that out. And I don't think I don't know. At one point in the Bible, God says that like everything you do is like shit rags, basically.
Right.
So it's just one of those things. Like I don't know. It's as much as like these Trump super conservative Christians, like they talk about like being homophobic and against gay people, and it's like, man, something so important, the Bible spends not that like God doesn't spend that much time thinking, like talking about it,
Right. Right. And
and it's
like
like mentioned once, and you could argue that it was like just for that period of time with those particular people. I don't know. It's just real silly to me.
and then everything about Trump is money based,
Hmm.
and well, one that's not even real. Someone told me this amazing story. Apparently, there's a story that his daughter told about when she was growing up. He pointed out a homeless guy and was like, "He is $500 million richer than I am," and because that's how much debt he was in.
Oh shit.
Which even that, like, you look at that story and you go, "That's kind of funny, actually."
Yeah, that's
Uh,
hilarious.
um, but there's nothing in the there's nothing in the Bible really about money other than like pay your taxes and don't be so concerned with it that it overtakes everything. In fact, like give most of it away so it doesn't.
Yeah, that's the Bible is basically just like money is a tool. It's not that. I would say in my faith journey, that's been like the one thing that if I when I stop caring about money, it like when I need money, it appears. Like I will get jobs
Mm-hmm.
and like people will reach out to me to freelance and stuff. And we were talking about this the other day, that like it's when you sweat it and like really think about it and like dwell on it, it seems to just like never be there, because all you're doing is
Yep.
paying attention to how much like little money you have versus like an abundance mentality where you're like, it'll be fine, I'm gonna like figure this out, it'll be great, you know.
Right.
And that's the I felt like the Bible was pretty clear on that. It was basically just like, all right, pay your government, give God some money, give a lot of it away, and just like live on the rest, and then you'll always be fine. Which is just so fascinating. It's like the one thing in the Bible where God's like, it's just if you do this, it'll be good. Like, I can't get clearer.
Right. And then it is funny that when you look into like a manifestation and magic, it pretty much is just like money's easy, but don't think about it or mess with it really, because it'll work itself out anyway. Like
You're
it's
right.
it's already taken care of in a sense, but if you really need to, here's some stuff you can do, and it's just like, yeah, like not even, and I mean even like manifestation stuff just works better if you're trying to bring yourself to well, here is my life in like a fully realized state, and let me just imagine that's how I am all the time. And it's like, well, money is one of those things because, it just kind of comes with it. That was
Yeah.
something that I was always told growing up by my a little bit out. So my aunt on my dad's side was a big Wayne Dryer fan. He's like a like new agey self help kind of dude. Um,
Uh.
but he was heavily influenced by Neville Goddard. He's considered to be one of the people that kind of came underneath him after.
Oh.
She was like really into his stuff. But she would always tell me, do the work and the money will come. And I always really appreciated that sentiment. Just like, if you get good at what you do, you won't have to worry.
Right. Also, my one of my favorite quotes. It says in Buddhist quote. It says, "Before enlightenment, dig a well, carry water. After enlightenment, dig a well, carry water." Like there's just something you're gonna have to work. I mean, that's kind of the reality.
Yeah.
It's like you're gonna have to labor in some way to like live and exist, which I think is just like a good reminder that like that's kind of what we're here to do in a way, is to like work. Anyways, we've got way off track.
If we're getting back on track, like all the stuff that we've just been talking about is the complete opposite of everything Trump related. And that's difficult because like what we're talking about right now is like the hardest spirituality, at least for us, in a way that is like very real and makes sense, and has the quality of fresh baked bread, which is what you're after.
Right.
Whereas like none of that stuff is what Trump is about, and so like Christianity might be headed towards like the dark ages.
Right. And it's such a good reminder, even for anyone. It doesn't have to be just Christians, but it's like, be careful who you hitch your wagon to,
Oh yeah.
because I mean that's the ultimate lesson here, is like I feel like a lot of Christians need the president to be conservative or match their viewpoints, because it validates. It's all about like getting validated, you know? Like I want to be right. I want to be the one who's, superior. And
Right.
that mindset alone is like legit the opposite of what Jesus said. Jesus said like the first will be last. Like he was real clear like on like if you're number one and like suppressing people, Jesus did not like was not on your team. Just like read the Bible. Like he wasn't about it. Like the all the rich people and this, he didn't hang out with the rich people and like the religious scholars and the people who were, you know, newsworthy. He was like with just normal folks. And it just makes me, it's just such a good reminder, like this whole situation, this article is just be careful who you hit your, even for me, it's like be careful who you hit your wagon to. Like I've really been listening to a lot of like Terrence McKenna. He's awesome. But if I start to use Terrence McKenna to like constantly validate my
Oh, that doesn't end well.
religious
Because he was wrong
practice,
about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, everyone's
Like
wrong about a lot
knowingly
of
wrong.
stuff.
Yeah. Like his whole time wave zero theory ended up being like a giant bust pretty much. Or
Yeah.
maybe we just didn't understand it, but um it's also then again like you become your own echo chamber for things like if you don't it's that like if he had been getting together and like discussing his ideas with other people, there might have been some kind of a refinement.
Hmm.
Or maybe it just would have been like spinning wheels and never would have gone anywhere. And what we actually do need is for people to go a little bit crazy and like forge forward in a way. But we also have like the dumb version of that, which is Trump, where it's like, yeah, he definitely like forged forward, but like not really where anybody wanted to go.
He forged, just not ahead. He went somewhere.
Yeah, he went somewhere. We're not entirely sure where. And that's the thing too, and I think this is probably my final point on it, is that rah rah like us versus them mentality about everything that starts to kick into play with this stuff. Like that
Hmm.
shit is I remember feeling that when I was a kid, when I started like branching out and trying to listen to music. So my relationship with the music was mostly like hidden away from my parents because I knew that it was such an ill-approved thing,
Right.
especially because I grew up listening to radio in Africa, which for the most part is just like Shaggy and like Wyclef Jean, and
Hell yeah.
it was amazing when Outkast started playing in Kenya. Like so I was like into hip hop and R&B from like a pretty early age, and all that like I was constantly getting my radio taken away from me and everything. And so as I started like getting older and dipping my toes out into music, I would try because I wanted to like own the physical copy of things, and my mom was such like a prison guard about
Hmm.
all the stuff in my room, and I would get my shit searched through. Like I had a folder of like advertisements from Game Informer magazines that are like Dead or Alive beach volleyball, like that
Yeah,
kind
you
of thing,
did.
hidden away in a folder. And I got that shit taken, man. It was
uh,
terrible. So I know I couldn't have anything, so I had to like branch out. So I would tell my parents, I'd be like, they're Christian. I would like find something that would be like them thanking God, and they'd be like, they're Christian, they're on our team, and then that's how I would get to like listen to it. But I would like have to sell it, like I would
right.
have to really push it.
So this is
And
just like another version of that.
yeah, yeah, it was just wheeling and dealing to get the thing that I wanted under the banner of Christianity. Uh,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it,
it makes
it like
sense.
we're all capable of it. And
Yeah.
so in a way it's like hard it's hard not like it sucks that it happened because like we are probably looking at like a ruined generation of Christianity after, you know but then like on the other side of that, like maybe what really happened is we just got like a bunch of people to finally leave the church that were waiting for that opportunity to really push them out the door and figure out what this actually looks like for themselves instead of just buying what's happening when they go to church,
Hmm.
um, and hoping that it gets better from week to week.
No, that's great. I would tell my final takeaway is that if you find yourself in this camp like me, where you're like, I can't associate myself with Christians who are like this, that's fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with wanting to distance yourself from someone who you disagree with, or someone who may be like toxic, um, to talk to or have a conversation with. And I would just be, it's like the whole point of the show is to figure out, what the good parts are about religion and like what to hang on to. So I would, again, it's a good reminder, like, yeah, it's fine to distance yourself, but at the same time, like, don't throw all the baby out with the bathwater. Like, think about, try to force yourself to think about the good things about maybe Christianity, or the good parts about how Trump has affected this, maybe it woke a bunch of people up and turned them into like activists. I would argue that Christians, if they actually like did the shit that Jesus said to do, we wouldn't need things like welfare and all these social services, because the Christians would just be doing it to everyone for free.
Yeah.
So maybe that's, I mean, it could be the beginning of that.
I
People who like really are starting to figure out and saying like they have a clear picture of what it isn't, you know, and they're starting to do their own thing. So we'll see.
I wonder if we can do that, like have like a Jesus challenge where we pick out actual things that Jesus did and then do them, but pick out the ones that would be like so radically different than like what's actually happening within Christianity that like the Jesus challenge ends up being something that's like rather astonishingly difficult and uncomfortable for most people.
I'm here for it.
Okay, we'll powwow with this later, but like, all right, maybe we might come up with something, just like a way to like really, like I don't know, like the first thing would be like you have to cast a demon out into some pigs or something, you know, and then make them run off a cliff.
That's not where my mind was going. I was like, oh, you have to actually give money to the poor or some shit like that. I like your idea better. Just immediately be like, all right, really trying to figure out this Jesus thing. Does anyone need an exorcism? That's such a perfect way to end it. I have nothing better to add. Hey, thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, there's more. Go listen to those. And if you want to be on the episode, hit us up on Instagram and shoot us a message. Are you in this group of used to be Christians and now you can't do it anymore because of the last 4 years of Trump and Christian conservatives? Let's talk about it. Thanks for listening, y'all.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Later.
Bye.